The early 20th century world on the brink of unprecedented change. Empires sprawled across the globe, their power seemingly absolute, but beneath this veneer of stability, tension simmered. Nationalism was on the fire, rivalries intensified, and a complex web of military alliances promised that any small spark could ignite a global inferno. That spark came on a summer's day in Sarajevo, June 28, 1914. Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, and his wife Sophie were assassinated by a young Serbian nationalist. A single act of political violence set in motion a domino effect that no one could stop. Austria-Hungary, seeking to crush Serbian nationalism, issued an ultimatum. Serbia, backed by Russia, refused to fully comply. One by one, the great powers of Europe, bound by their treaties, were dragged into the conflict. Germany declared war on Russia and France. Britain, honoring its pledge to protect Belgium, declared war on Germany. In just a few weeks, the continent was engulfed in a war unlike any seen before. It was meant to be over by Christmas. Millions of young men, filled with patriotic fervor, marched off to war. They believed in glory, in a swift victory. They could not have imagined the hell that awaited them. The Western Front, a brutal scar stretching from the Swiss border to the North Sea, became the symbol of this new kind of warfare. Here the dreams of a quick war died, replaced by the grim reality of trenches. Life in the trenches was a nightmare. Soldiers lived in a maze of mud, water and filth. They faced constant shelling, the threat of sniper fire, and the terror of going over the top into the deadly expanse of no man's land. This was a landscape of barbed wire, shell craters, and the constant presence of death. Rats, lice, and disease were as much an enemy as the soldiers in the opposite trench. The psychological toll was immense. The term shell shock entered our vocabulary to describe the trauma that would haunt survivors for the rest of their lives. This war was a crucible of technological innovation, but these innovations only served to make the killing more efficient. Machine guns, which could mow down hundreds of men in minutes, dominated the battlefield. Heavy artillery rained down unimaginable destruction, turning landscapes into lunar surfaces. Poison gas, a terrifying new weapon, choked and blinded soldiers, creating a new kind of horror. For the first time, tanks rumbled across the battlefield, armored beasts designed to break the stalemate. In the skies, seaplanes, once a novelty, engaged in deadly dogfights, becoming the eyes of the army and a new frontier of combat. The year 1916 saw two of the most infamous battles in human history. At Verdun, the French and German armies bled each other white in a 10-month struggle for a symbolic fortress. The battle cry was, "They shall not pass," and the cost was over 700,000 casualties. Further north, the Battle of the Somme began. On the first day alone, the British Army suffered nearly 60,000 casualties, the deadliest day in its history. These battles achieved little strategically but came to symbolize the senseless slaughter and futility of the war. While the Western Front was locked in stalemate, the war raged across the globe. On the Eastern Front, the vast armies of Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Russia clashed in a war of movement, with devastating losses. In the Middle East, the Ottoman Empire fought against the British and their allies, leading to campaigns in Gallipoli, Mesopotamia, and Palestine. The war also extended to the seas, where German U-boats waged a ruthless campaign of unrestricted submarine warfare, sinking merchant and passenger ships alike, disrupting vital supply lines. The war was not just fought by soldiers. It was a total war, demanding the complete mobilization of entire societies. On the home front, civilians faced rationing, shortages, and the constant anxiety of waiting for news from the front. Women entered the workforce in unprecedented numbers, taking on jobs in factories, on farms, and as nurses, proving their capabilities and forever changing their role in society. Propaganda posters and newsreels rallied public support, often dehumanizing the enemy and glorifying the conflict. By 1917, the strain of war was pushing nations to their breaking point. In Russia, widespread discontent and catastrophic military losses led to revolution. The Tsar was overthrown, and later that year, the Bolsheviks seized power, promising peace, land, and bread. They quickly signed a treaty with Germany, and Russia exited the war. This was a huge blow to the Allies, but another world power was about to enter the fray. The United States had remained officially neutral, though it supplied the Allies with goods and loans. Public opinion began to shift due to German submarine warfare, particularly the sinking of the Lusitania, and the interception of the Zimmermann telegram, which proposed a German-Mexican alliance against the U.S. in April 1917. America declared war on Germany. The arrival of fresh American troops, the Doughboys, provided a much-needed boost to the exhausted Allied forces. In the spring of 1918, Germany, freed from the Eastern Front, launched a massive final offensive on the Western Front, hoping to win the war before the full might of the American army could be felt. The German spring offensive initially made huge gains, but the Allies, under a unified command, bent but did not break. They held the line. Then, the tide turned. In the summer and fall of 1918, the Allies launched a series of counteroffensives known as the 100 Days Offensive. With American troops pouring in and their own forces bolstered by new tactics and technology, the Allies began to push the Germans back. The German army, exhausted and demoralized, began to collapse. At home, the German people were starving, and revolution was in the air. Realizing the war was lost, Germany's military leaders sought an armistice. On the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, 1918, the guns on the Western Front finally fell silent. The Great War was over. The silence was deafening. Soldiers emerged from their trenches, staring in disbelief at the scarred and broken world they had inherited. The aftermath was catastrophic. Over 16 million people, both soldiers and civilians, were dead. Another 20 million were wounded. For great empires, the German, Austro-Hungarian, Russian, and Ottoman had crumbled to dust. The map of Europe was redrawn. The Treaty of Versailles, signed in 1919, imposed harsh terms on Germany, forcing it to accept blame for the war and pay crippling reparations. Many believed this punitive peace would only sow the seeds for future conflict. World War I, the war to end all wars, shattered a generation and reshaped the modern world in ways we still feel today. It was a tragedy of immense scale, a stark reminder of the devastating cost of conflict. It changed warfare, society, and the global balance of power forever. We remember the fallen, we study their sacrifice, and we must never forget the lessons learned in the mud and blood of the trenches. Thank you for watching. If you found this documentary informative, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more stories from history. We'll see you in the next one.